right. Uh, let me make sure my mic is plugged in. And let me make sure it's the right mic. Uh, all right. Uh, okay. So everything should be working fine. I'm just going to draw. I think I'm going to try and draw. Start with something I have been kind of practicing doing. That is doing a bit of Five Freddy's sketches because FNAF characters are really interesting, and this is a type of stream I can just kind of talk and do work on. And we're selected clear right now. All right. Start with a simple head shape. Go a little bit bigger, maybe. Yeah, that's too big. Somewhere about that. Okay. So we actually shouldn't have that much time left to wait until security breach for Five Nights at Freddy's. Let's actually do it like that. It's straighter, and that's more how it should be. Let's also fix that a bit. So, let's get that going. So that's why I'm drawing Freddy first. Let's just do a good old classic Freddy. Okay, art pad. Okay, that's weird. Oh, it wasn't plugged in all the way. I might give a shot drawing Michael. Because I've never actually drawn Michael. And we actually don't know much about how he looks. Let's get a reference circle. Let's try to make sure he's not cross-eyed. And I don't want to go for a creepier Freddy or a more like in-universe, like poster Freddy. Need to make this part a bit like that, because this head shape's a little weird. Like if you look at like actual canon, like Freddy, his head shape isn't quite traditional, which is because he was modeled to be like, oh, he's an animatronic. First, before he was modeled to be like an in-universe character, like if that's understandable at all. What I'm trying to get at, like, point is, Freddy was designed to be an animatronic character for a horror game. I think I want to go with a more like, you could see this in a kids show Freddy. uh, first, because that's a bit more natural for me to draw. Because I typically work with more like actual beings or like very set in stone here. Actually, uh, let me actually pull up a shot of some of my characters so we have a bit of understanding of what I'm saying. Like, Blender models, yeah, Dynamo, yeah, concept art. So like here's what I'm talking about when I do like either where's actually like a pretty good example. I just realized Neon Dynamo probably was not the best thing to go to first, because a lot of the characters have somewhat like less humane traits and features. I guess Rust is still a good like main character. Rust. This is a later design. It's not even in the comic itself yet, but he has the weird button eyes. But that's a canon. That's a lore thing about him. But you can see it's like more humanoid. But then I also have characters that are like very out there robotic, like Delta here. Like he is very much a machine, like a robot. Or another example of like a very inhuman character. This is Drekarot, which are both kind of spoilers, but no one's going to watch the stream. Bets are. No one's going to read Neon Dynamo at least. I certainly can't show the probably. Actually, here's a really human character. This guy is just a normal human, just pretty old. His name is Monty. But that's an example of like my much more traditional like human. I work in a lot more extremes, and Finance Phrase is meant to be in that uncanny valley area. So it's a little like harder for me to quite get to. But I can still manage. It's actually one of my better Freddy's I've drawn. I have practiced this character for a certain project I've been wanting to work on. So this isn't just like, oh, I just busted out a decent looking Freddy. No, there's a bit of a project I've been working on that involves Freddy. So it's weird. Freddy, because he's animatronic, we don't really get to see like, does he have a neck? We do see that with kind of the rock stars. And because he's a very dumpy cartoon bear in this case, we're going to give him very let's try to give him a bit more. I'm giving him two kind of humanoid proportions right now. I need to cut down on that and make him a bit more like yeah, that's a bit more like it'll make sense what I'm trying to like. Actually, let me go for like a more. Yeah, that's actually, let's get a hand base going like that. That's a bit better. That will help a little bit. His thumb should be a little larger. If he's a cartoon character. because and now let's get his classic microphone. I remember looking at this to try and figure out how it like worked. I'm just going to kind of freestyle it. I'm going to try and do this without a reference, because that just I already stopped to show you some of my own characters, and I loosely remember what it looks like. And we won't be able to see most of it, so let's just do a quick little art trick to make that kind of look a bit more like scratchy and microphone-y. Let's see, is that accurately? Yeah, that's accurately scaled, roughly. Okay. Now let's see if I can. I'm still not quite. Let's function like that. Make him a bit more like slouched. And like part of the reason we don't really, what I was briefly touching on was we don't really see Freddy's neck ever, because it's always an animatronic skeleton, like kind of like that outside the suit, and then it goes into his head like that, like boop, the skeleton that connects, and it's got like the wires and all that. But like in a more cartoon, fanciful Freddy, we don't really know what that would look like. I guess I could look at the Rockstar Freddy from the menu of but that's I'm not really satisfied with this. And now let's get a bit of a like a boop like that. Freddy doesn't have buttons in his original like FNAF 1 design. So okay, let me actually rework this just a little bit to make the hand a little larger. There we go, that's a little bit more. That's what he should be kind of like. Because right now I'm just in the rough sketch phase, so I can be a lot more like nonsensical, I guess, about my art, for lack of a better term. Like, let's see what. I'm not really going for like an 80s style for this, so I can be a bit more like my. Even though I really should be, and can I say like an actual FNAF pizzeria, if it was a real brand in the world, would be pretty cool, because even though like a fair chunk of the series is set surprisingly really close to modern day, if not in the future, and like if you think about it, like I said, a surprising amount of it, because the first game is early 2000s, which is still 20 years ago technically now, or like in fact, as of today, as of the end of today, 2001 was 20 years ago. But beside the point, let me actually make that a little bit larger, because it's going to be a bit closer to us. no clue how I'm drawing a Freddy like this. Like, I have never drawn a Freddy. The feet are too long, or like the legs are too long. This is why I often use 3D reference models for my characters. Okay, I like what I did with the feet, but I need to, like I said, shorten them. Let's see, so this one's closer, so it's going to be a little longer. Let's just get that for like a reference. That might be a bit better. Let's go for like here-ish. I'm also going to try to have a bit of a variety of art styles with these streams. I'm going to try and do a bit more. Let's get the base foot design first. For that one, I can do this one a little bit easier because I've kind of learned the trick to doing these shots with Freddy, and that's especially with the FNAF Era 1 designs. Like I always said, I can be a bit rougher with my initial sketches. Which is kind of half true, because I'm going to be like tracing over some of this. There we go. That's a bit better in like proportions to like Freddy. Let's get, there we go. I can actually shrink this. I'm not that satisfied with that anyway, so. There we go, that's a little smaller, so it gets the perspective done a little bit better. Actually, both of these could be a bit smaller. I kind of learned this kind of weird pad. Like, obviously, it's how the animatronics are in just normal Five Nights at Freddy's. That's why I'm doing it in the first place. I'm still making the actual weird pads themselves a bit too large. I'm not quite getting down what I should be with them, which is but like I looked how to do it in terms of like 2D art and animation. Even though I don't do animation. Yeah, I want to. Don't get me wrong, I just don't yet. Now, is that too small? For perspective, if I shrink down this leg a bit, shouldn't it be further back, actually? Let's erase some of the frames so we can get a bit more have a good look at this, Freddy. I think with some slight, because the original Freddy is like all of the original characters are pretty, like original game characters are pretty chunky in design. I might make him just a little too far though. Let's actually make it more like that. We want this to intersect over that. But I honestly think the actual like the in-universe mascot characters are some of like the less, like not necessarily underrated, but like the least traversed kind of parts of the FNAF universe, if you think about it. Like we get to know a lot of the well, we actually don't. I think, in fact, yeah, actually, Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy themselves are probably the least traversed part of Five Nights. Let's do a new layer and let's get a larger brush. Start tracing this over to get a more clean sketch. Like we don't know much about Gabriel, Susie, Fritz, and Jeremy, like as in the souls possessing them. Like we know Susie had like a dog that presumably William ran over, or something happened to. Actually, let me just do it like that. We don't know much about the characters of Freddy, Bonnie, Chica. Like, we know Foxy's like, oh, he's adventurous, fun pirate boy. We don't know much about, like, say, like, we know Freddy is this kind of Barney-like, like, sort of, like, slower talking, like, no, now. Now would be a good time to hold your breath. Like, that kind of voice, that's how he talks in AR. And we know Chica seems to have a thing for, like, pizza and is kind of like a bit of a glutton, but also kind of goofy. It's kind of what's been implied about her from, like, posters and shit. And, like, how she acts in, like, VR, which did some of the most characterization. And it's how a lot of the other Chicas kind of are, to say it like they're a bit like, yeah, they're a bit like, a lot of times there's like a food thing, and they're a lot often like very more energetic. Whereas Bonnie's one of the a bit like the most elusive in personality to me because he's never had a voice. None of the Bonnies are that consistent. I guess they're a bit punny and snarky. I guess that's something that Withered Bonnie and Rockstar Bonnie have in common. I don't think any of the other Bonnies have voice. Oh, and Toy Bonnie has this like really high pitched squealy like fuck. That I really hate in AR. I don't care if that's the canon voice for Bonnie, Toy Bonnie. I am honestly more like accepting and favorable for the 5 a.m. at Freddy's the prequel by Mation's voice for him. I think that fits him better. Well, actually, it does fit. I will say, like, it fits Toy Bonnie, but I still don't like it, and it might just be a symptom of me not liking Toy Bonnie. I just realized Freddy doesn't really have eyelids in this. I guess he doesn't really need to, but Freddy definitely does have like eyelids in the games. Actually, let's just do the full circle for now and do shading a bit after. I might want to shade that in, I'm not sure. Actually, screw it. How does that look? Oh, I also want to redo that eye. There we go. That's much cleaner. And now, the classic artist challenge of drawing a circle. What is it about circles that is so challenging? We may never know. I'm gonna try and adjust this eye a little bit. I know I could move it artificially. Let's see, how does that look? Yeah, that's pretty solid. Let's adjust it just a little bit there. But that's what second doings of stuff are for. Okay. Okay. Let's give him a little like that. Okay, he's kind of hard to do. That's the other thing with, like, Freddy is so built to be an animatronic that he's a little harder to do expressions with. Like, he doesn't really have, like, an easy mouth to do, but luckily his eyes always make him just expressive enough for it to work. But let's get that classic bow tie, which I'm pretty much freestyling, but I actually but I'm pretty sure that's close enough to like the look. Let's see, how did I do it on? Okay. Oh, that's the like other thing I struggle with a lot is I do something on one side and I struggle to do it on the other a lot. Like, see here, I did the stroke from the bottom. Yeah, like that. I'm drawing FNAF 1 Freddy. also makes me wonder if makes me just think about like FNAF Plus Freddy. Make this finger just a touch larger. Or at least the Freddy we've seen of FNAF Plus. Still not quite satisfied. Close enough. Let's extend that a bit to make that look less awkward. Freddy, that chalkiness he's known for. I never finished like the microphone itself. I just realized. I just kind of sketched it in and drew the rest of his arm, and drew his arm, and then it's doing a circle again, and getting it to still look like a circle. And now you follow curvature. Try and get it to still look like a microphone. And since I messed this up the first time, I'm basically going to have to freestyle it. Okay, that's good enough. Since I'm not doing this for like a professional comic, kind of like, or not a professional, but since I'm not doing this for my comic, I'm going to be a little bit more lax. Okay. I think there's this weird little disc thing at the bottom, and then I'm pretty sure the microphone just kind of stops existing after that point, but because that's not really nice to look at, I'm going to just do that. That just gives it a little bit more presence. I think I got enough of his kind of cartoonish nature down. Let's get that snapping. I gotta say, of all like the franchises to get like such big attention and hype, I'm glad that Scott Cawthon's was one of them. Wait, I just want to quickly check on. I just thought about like, does Freddy have buttons in the first game? I don't think he does. I don't remember. I remember thinking he did and being like, oh, he doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't in the first game. He doesn't have buttons. It's the second game that gives him buttons. And we don't get to see the bottom of his microphone. But it does have the little... In the second game, it does give it the little, like, thing at the bottom. And I drew the microphone completely wrong. It doesn't have texturing in the first one. It just kind of exists. This is... So, okay, I'm still going to give it my fantastical bottom, but I will fix right here the microphone itself. So I drew it completely wrong. In the first game, which is what I'm trying to base this off of, it has like the weird disc thing. I totally forgot that was like a... totally forgot that was how it looked. It doesn't have the texturing. It's solid plastic. Or metal or whatever it is. Probably plastic. My God, what do we think the animatronics are even made out of? Because, like, plastic would be... Like, plastic or, like, fabric are the two obvious ones. I'd, like, certainly the FNAF 2 ones are plastic. Like, there's no kind of doubt about that. But, like, I presume it's fabric based on how it looks. It's textured that way. In the first game. But it's still like, huh. Makes you wonder. And, like, most of the... But, like, the other thing is, if you look at, like, the FNAF 1 animatronics, like, even though they're based off, like, whatchamacallit, like, Chuck E. Cheese animatronics, they really don't look like most real-world animatronics. Which is, like, the funniest thing is, like, if you show me, like, a picture of, like, a fan-made animatronic, they always have that same, quality, like, this segmented, like, quality to them. But, like, and that's, like, associated with the FNAF characters, because it's not a real thing. Like, animatronics don't look like that. They don't have, like, those stereotypical, like, segmented parts that, like, it's basically a Mandala effect for Five Rays. And I know it's because it's loosely based off of Chipper. And that's kind of how Chipper and Sons was, and that's how the robots were in that game. I think that's just how Scott Cawthon does robot characters. That's a little rough. I can do a bit more, like, yeah, a bit more for what this Freddy is. If I restarted, I would make him a bit more round. But I'm going for more of this, like, bean-shaped thing. There we go. I guess the other thing about Freddy is, if I remember correctly, doesn't he have... Yeah, he has these weird... If you look at him, he has, like, these splotches on the bottom. Of him. Or, to be clear, what I'm talking about is, like, these, like, bumps at the bottom of his feet. And all of, like, the first Game Animatronics have that. But yeah, to go into what I'm talking about, like, animatronics don't have these. Let me look up. If we look up, like, Chuck E. Cheese animatronics, they aren't segmented like that. Like, if you look at, like, any picture of them, like, they've never been, because they just have fabric under them. It's just moved around because it's lightweight, cheap fabric, right? Like, they don't need to be designed in this segmented way. And it's one of the most fascinating, like, things about it. It's like phrase, and it definitely makes them look fake and, like, animatronic-y. And I could see animatronics like that. But, whatchamacallit, it's not how real animatronics are. Let's also, I want to make sure, is that the actual render? Because I know, no, it's not. Most of the characters waving, but Freddy himself is not. I don't think we've ever seen Freddy's open palm. Yeah, FNAF AR Freddy is way glossier. That's kind of the style of most of the AR animatronics. And that's another weird thing is, in AR, that's not the same mic as FNAF 1 Freddy. Like, these are pretty different. Like, they're pretty spot-on models, like, in terms of proportions and everything like that. But it's still interesting. But they got the fact that it doesn't have buttons down. Show creation fan models. Yeah. Let's see.
Stadia is a gaming service by Google, and it's totally free to try on devices you already own. That's right.
These,
you won't have to buy
the official
any
animation.
hardware to play the
Tell them
latest
out.
and greatest
Shut up,
games.
Stadia ad.
Head to stadia.com
I'm
right
just
now
checking
and get
this because
started
I want to
with your free
know
month trial.
if I'm right about the models. That looks about right. I have the game on my phone. So he does have... I know, like I said, the model isn't exactly what the game is, but it's the closest thing I think we have to what FNAF 1 Freddy's hand looks like. So he does have... like a pad on the inside of his hand. That's what I wanted to see. That's what I wanted to see. And while we're at it, just because it looks kind of better, let's see if I can... Actually, does it look better? Let me check. I can look at this objectively. Let's make this a bit smaller. Yeah, I'd say so. It certainly helps you figure out what this is. I can also say I want to slightly adjust. I think I got the bow tie pretty much right in terms of like most of it, but I didn't get the center part set down quite the way it should be. Really should have. Alright, now it looks a bit better. And let's, while we're at it, get the weird way that like Freddy's feet are done. Out of the way. He has the weird little pad things. That actually makes it look way more like the actual game Freddy. To have the weird little pad things that they don't really have like after the first game. Like that's pretty much a relic of the first game. I'm spending a lot of time on Freddy. Actually, now that I think about it, 47 minutes for something I draw is not that bad. Okay, let's try to make sure it's like notably standing out from it, but not too much. In fact, I really could just do this. Just enough where it's like, yeah, there's a pad there, but not like in your face. There's like something there, because that's not how it really is in that first model. So yeah, this is a more characterized Freddy. I might go to Michael next because he's a much more interesting character to draw. And I'll probably have to use a human model because I want him to be much more like realistic looking. So since we actually did since I'm pretty proud of this Freddy as a whole, I'm going to actually I wasn't planning on coloring him initially, but I actually really like the look of this Freddy. So let's go for, what's a good Freddy brown? A little darker, a little duller, or a little brighter. A little duller. Let's actually, I want to have Freddy up for this because, I mean, no one's watching this. No one really cares. Oh, I closed the window that had. Let's look at, I'm going to use Trailer Freddy as an example. So he's a lot actually more golden brown than I thought. Now that I think, like, or not gold, like, not that. He's more like that. It's a bit closer, maybe a bit darker. That's probably the best I want to get for this, right? Luckily, or not luckily, annoyingly, with Clipsio, it has a bit of a fear of some colors, and it does this stupid white line thing. It's a similar effect to if you take physical, whatchamacallit, art, like physical line art, and scan it into a computer, and then you just do the fill tool to colors, and you don't correct them or fill them in properly. It does this same thing. And you have to fill it in kind of yourself, which, since this is going to be filled in later already, can be as rough as I want around like inner stuff. It's only on the outer stuff. You don't want to. You can't color outside the lines. It's preschool a lot. How do I want to shade this, Freddy? Oh, that's because shading is probably where the art styles I do diverge the most. Because like my normal shading, once again, to bring up sketches of, once again, I'm trying to find like a spoiler free image for Neon Dynamo, like, or one that has minimal. Actually, this character is about to appear in like the next chapter, so ignore the name. This is like an example of like, this is a gelatinous character, so they have like this kind of shading, and they have, okay, it's actually not a good example. Actually, this I'll just go back to normal rust. That's a good example. So you can see like, this is how I normally do the shading. I'd use the pencil tool, like the color pencil tool, to shade in, because I really like the like it looks. It makes it look a bit more like natural and authentic, and a bit more detailed. It gives this kind of rough feeling to it. But if we go to, I have, like I said, done for Five Nights at Freddy's art before. Let's go to my Fredbear sketch, for example. This is a very similar poses because they're very similar characters, even though personally I don't like that. This was just a rough experiment, Chica. But this is more accurate to it. Like, I could do this type of shading, and it's much more 80s cartoon showy. Or just cartoon show in general. Not really like 80s specifically. I'm thinking 80s because that's when it's weird. It's either in the past or in the future. There's not really like there's never a Freddy's of the present, really. Like, the first game and 3 are the closest we ever get, and they're both within like 20-year margins of the present. Or I guess technically FNAF 3 is the closest now, I think. Because isn't it like 2037 is the math people came out to? Because it's after the last Freddy's closed, and whatchamacallit, people did the math and they found it had to be 2002-ish. That's what, actually, that's thinking of that was, I remember that from a game theory thing, and game theory has some pretty good theories every now and like then when it comes to FNAF, and they are like some of the most like definitive and most interesting theories most of the time. But every now and then they have like the Michael Henry theory, which I'm pretty sure Treacle did actually even before MatPat, and I have always not despised, but I've never liked Treacle theories. They kind of shitty, honestly. Most of the ones I've seen, I stopped watching them. In fact, I only watched a handful of them. So I haven't seen enough Treacle theories to know definitively how good or bad Treacle is. I can say pretty much anything. I don't really know. I don't care. I'll say I don't like Treacle, but who knows? Maybe they got better over time. Whatever. Anyways, I've never been like, the Michael Henry thing is actually just, it's very ignorant, because like Matt is pretty good at remembering some details and stuff of the lore, but every now and then he just makes a very basic mistake that's really frustrating, because it's like, it's the whole crux of Michael Emily is that it's never outright stated in the games, which firstly is technically it's a little rough, because yes, it's not outright stated that like in the actual gameplay, but the audio file linked to Michael's monologue is named Michael Afton. That's literal statement from within the game, technically. I mean, if we're going to use, and it's like, and I would say like, oh, who would expect people to go into the files to learn stuff? Like, maybe Matt just didn't think to do that. But then you have one of his later theories talking about Glitch Trap, and how FNAF World and Ultimate Custom might use the same variable which I do think is intentional. I think it is just a little Easter egg, because like otherwise you wouldn't have written out the exact same variable, like an ending based variable. For example, like that's just like, it's from what I know about game design and coding, it'd be very strange if he recycled that same variable and didn't just make a new one, because it's not that much harder just to type out ultimate custom night thing. Like, I guess he could have copyright pasted some of the code or stuff, but whatever. It's I think it's intentional because it's Scott. But then again, Scott's kind of unpredictable. Anyway, point is, Michael, if Matt's gone into the game files or has seen Reddit posts related to the game files before, I'm honestly surprised that he never saw the fact that the file was named Michael Afton when making that theory. And what's also frustrating about that theory that he made when he made it is it was his theory about his like finance phrase explained like thus far or whatever it was. It was supposed to be one. It was one of the many times he tried to make a final theory on FNAF. Was the one that was Scott said was like, oh, this is a really good explanation of the series. This is probably the closest people have gotten so far. Like there are a few holes, but everything's pretty much like the most of it's pretty much solid and like correct. And that was the one in which Michael was the son of William, which, I mean, even if we didn't have the fact that the file was named Michael Afton _3, referring to him that it was the third take, pretty much is what everyone's understand that this is. And or it's because I think you unlock it on hard. Technically, you can like the ideal way to get it is very hard, but I'm pretty sure you can just unlock it on hard mode. So anyway, whatever the point is, it's the file's name Michael Afton. It's not like, oh, but in the first game, Freddy's file is named Girls Laugh. Well, that's because it was a reused asset. Michael's voice. It was like, does that mean, are you saying Freddy's a girl by that logic? Well, no, that's a reused asset. That's something from a audio cloud. So of course it's not going to have like like that's a different example. That's, you get what I'm trying to say, probably. Point is, Michael's voice line is a predetermined thing specifically made for FNAF, and it was named Michael Afton _3. And not to mention, Scott had 2 other male voice actors, and he chose to have the same person as William's voice acting. And even PJ Haywood himself has like kind of been like, he never says Michael Afton, like for example in the Daco interview, but he basically does everything but that. In that interview, where it's like, you have to, like, I think he even says he has to make them similar enough, but still try and make them different enough where they're like different characters. Okay, so here's another weird thing about FNAF 1 Freddy I noticed is that he's very slight difference between stomach like pad thing and, or at least like the highlights of his body, like the pads and stuff, and the actual code first. So that's what I'm going for here. It's very close but not quite. So yeah, because yeah, he had at that time he had contact to Kellen, and what's his face, the person who plays the voice, who's like, with all due respects, Mr. Afton, those aren't the design features we're talking about. Like the guy who says that in the opening sister location. So it's like I said, it's not like he didn't have access to male voice like other male voice actors. So it's pretty and then on top of that, there's not really much evidence that Michael actually is the son of Henry. Like there's evidence for him being the son of William, not for Henry. It's to me like the dumbest like thing that was like put in question ever. Now whether he's Foxy Bro is a bit more of a debate. I personally think that the idea is that he is. Though it's kind of shaky because the design of the two brothers and like the designs of the two brothers in 4 are very distinct from Michael's design. Like Michael, especially since we don't see it ever because we never get to see Michael's eyes when he's alive, like when he's not filled by an animatronic or already a corpse. So we actually don't know what Michael's true eye color is. A lot of people will like say it's blue, but it could be black or green were the two I would go for, because Elizabeth has green eyes, and then Foxy Bro and or like the crying child or bite victim has actually I do like the padding. Now I'm looking at it put into place. I guess we don't see Foxy Bro's eyes, but he has black hair, and the younger brother has black eyes. So, whatever. My point like stands. It's like it might have just been a retcon, sure, but it's still weird that the designs are so drastically different and all that. And then one of the biggest things I think we can pretty much determine that FNAF 2 or sister location is before FNAF 2, like almost right before it, in fact. Because it says, after the unfortunate closing, it's like, so that could be after FNAF 1 or before FNAF 2, or between FNAF 1 and 2. Right, it has to exist one of those time slots because of that phrasing. And then it's like, and the characters are so high tech though. But I think even Scott said himself that was kind of a mistake. That the characters ended up being high tech because he often like naturally leads to like way more sci-fi designs. So I wouldn't say that tech proves that they're in the future per se. And already, FNAF 2 had facial recognition software, so it's not like these characters were outdated or like actually realistic to the time period. Hell, the ability to walk around is something that we don't have in the present day fully for animatronic. Like, we have made walking robots, but not ones that you could afford in goddamn like in a goddamn dinky pizzeria place. For example. So I was saying that that's like too high tech. It is higher tech than the other Freddy's places, I guess. But I really think that was just a design choice. But what makes me think it is, so a pretty popular fan theory that I stand by pretty solidly, because it makes so much sense, is that Fritz Smith, the second night guard of FNAF 2, and like the one you play on Custom Night, and Mike Schmidt from the first game are fired because they tampered with the animatronics, which pretty obvious why you would get fired. General unprofessionalism, whatever that means, and odor are like it's almost like the soda OJ purple stuff of FNAF employees getting fired. But Michael is a walking corpse because of the events of Sister Location. So, of course, he'll smell awful. So it's like the general theory that, once again, it's one of those I stand by pretty strongly, is that that's the corpseified Michael walking around. And like I stand by it because it fits the lore, it makes sense. And it makes it so FNAF Sister Location has to be before FNAF 2. Because Michael is still fired for that reason, if he's Fritz Smith. Therefore, he had already be scooped by the events of FNAF 2, which is in 1987, so... and it takes place before the first game, so then he would definitely be scooped by the first game. Which puts Sister Location, in my bet, 1985 or 1987 or 1986. I think that makes the most sense within the relative time span of things. And there's also another fun theory that's also pretty much something I stand by, and that's let me look at Freddy's microphone. It's primarily black with the ball, like, or like the actual mic part of it, the intake, whatever you would call it. I don't actually know what it's called, being gray. And since I added a little bit to it, even though it doesn't have this, I will say I actually have, from a Five Nights at Freddy's costume, like a Freddy mic that's completely different. So it's so my brother got a Freddy costume at one point. And it's another one of those where it doesn't match up with any, like, I'm sure there's so many Freddys, and there's also Fredbear with microphones, that it has to match up with like one or two of them. Anyway, what was I getting at? Oh yeah, timeline lore. So, and no matter how you think of it, since the FNAF 2 is set in 1987, and FNAF 1, they passively mention the Baidu 87 being in the past. No matter how you think of that, that means FNAF 2 had to be before FNAF 1, and like, knowing what we know, it had to be like a notable amount of time after. And I know there was like the game theory, like I said, math of like, oh, it's specifically, whatchamacallit, actually, could FNAF 1 Freddy, did he have eyelids? Let me look. He did. He had like black eyelids. He's also, his nose is way larger than I made it. Like, Jesus, look at the Five Nights at Freddy's like teaser trailer. Look how big it is. Jesus. Like, it's way smaller. I'm drawing it like it's Five Nights at Freddy's 2 Freddy. I can very quickly and easily fix that. So let's do that real quick. Kind of ruins it. Ruins the balance of the head I got here. But if I'm going for FNAF 1 Freddy, it's a pretty big snoot. It's a pretty boopable big snoot. So very round. Like, even this isn't quite doing it justice. Let's clean up some of the random sketches and stuff there. And now let's start doing some shading. I think I want to go for my more natural, like, actual art style shading. I'll be a bit harsher because that kind of fits more with the FNAF. The way, like, most of the FNAF canon, like, art of the characters makes it this much rougher. Kind of toned everything. Like, it's like most FNAF. Like, let's actually get Uh, let's see if I can. It's a pretty specific Google search, so I don't know if I'll get. Oh, here's another fun little detail with the opening cutscene is it uses FNAF 1 Freddy, but then I know this is also a shot and it uses FNAF 2. It's weird. That opening cutscene uses two different Freddy designs. I didn't even like. And then it uses FNAF 1 Freddy again. Actually, neither of those. But oh, here's the example I was talking about. It has that more like harsh but kind of subtle shading, which is what I'm going to be more going for here. Like it's a more, like I said, harsh and subtle shading detail. Like it's not quite exactly my traditional art style, but I'm kind of hybridizing the way. Oh, I never colored his eyes in. He has these kind of like off bluish eyes. Actually, I just remembered I can fill most of it and just clean it up from there. And I do lighting and shading on different layers. I do lighting above and shading below, because shading typically kind of falls more within contours, whereas lighting typically is above or outmatches contours and lines. It's the easiest way to explain it. Like, you always, like, because if you think about it, a shadow falls behind something, well, lighting is on top of it, so that's why I do it that way, is it helps that feeling. The hat is very reflective, so it's going to need a lot harsher shading, like lighting setup. Yeah, it's going to need a bit more elaborate shading to it. Now let's get out the stuff that falls outside, because I do that a fair amount. I get so aggressive with my shading that I just kind of throw it everywhere sometimes. Let's also, not quite that harsh, but let's add some shading to the eyes. Now let's also get that there. Anything more reflective, I'm going to do a bit more shading work on, which is a surprising amount of FNAF 1 Freddy. Like, his microphone's shiny and reflective, his bow tie is, which is, like I said, is presumably because they're like hard plastic and stuff. Well, let's also quickly. Actually, I want a bit of a more vibrant yellow. That's just a cool little trick to make that like stand out a little bit more. That actually does a good job of kind of, like I said, blurring or like mixing my natural art style with Freddy's, the more FNAF like art style. I also guess I could have gone for the Silver Eyes art style, like the way the covers are done for Silver Eyes, which are pretty cool, but and I also could have done way like the novel covers sometimes are, which, or at least like the teasers for like Twisted Ones had like a stylization to the art. Like I said, this is much more reflective, so it's going to have kind of like a layered effect to that. And that's, like I said, also like how it looks in the game, so. And also, if this was Neon Dynamo, I would put a bit more work into the contours, or like connecting the contours with the shading. But it's not, so I'm just going to leave it at that basically. And now I'm going to shade inside of his stomach separately. That's how it is. Let me balance this out some bit more because it's kind of rough right now. I don't quite want to redo this entire shade, like all the shading so far, but I'm pretty much doing that anyway, so. There we go. That's much better. I sometimes, because of the way the brushes are, I struggle to actually like shade whatchamacallit, bound like the way I'll let's do an example. Let's say I was shading like this. You can see it doesn't quite, like all the shading's over here, but there's this little area where it doesn't, because that's where the way the brush is, and it kind of works because that's kind of how Neon Dynamo just looks. It works for Neon Dynamo because that's just kind of how I've decided art is Neon Dynamo. Less so here when I'm trying to be a bit like, I would have shaded like pretty much all of Freddy if I was doing the full Neon Dynamo art style treatment. And yeah, shading, even though the line work is basically the same as what I would do for Neon Dynamo, that shading difference is enough where I would say it's a bit of a different art style. That's how it is. Just like, I remember a quote from, it's Robert Paulson, right? Who plays Yakko in Animaniacs, amongst others. But one of his things he brings up with voice acting is that a lot of people are like, how do you get so many voices out? And he explains it's like, if you just do the same pitch, do a different accent. Let's say you can do if you can do 5 different accents, like a Russian, Irish, Australian, like flat accent, and maybe like, I don't know, British or like Scottish, that's 5 different voices in his view stance of voice acting. So even if they're all in the same tone, those are in it, as he like said, different voices. And just modifying the same basic tone and voice can also make like a different character. So it's how like shading is to me in like art is. Just because you have like the same general line work structure doesn't mean you have the same exact art style. To me, it's very much how you actually color in. Is this little line art? Okay, yeah. It's a little hard to tell. You just have the small images. It doesn't mean you have the same exact art style. So let's do some lighting. I have to be careful to balance this though, because I'm not abiding by the rules of my lines anymore on the lighting layer. It's very easy to get carried away and just basically like borderline erase the actual like the line art. You don't really want to do that too much. Unless you're going for something more realistic, you might want to do that then. If you're doing concrete line art like I'm doing, you probably aren't trying to go for something realistic at all. Like my line art is not realism based. In fact, line art as a concept really isn't that. Let me actually do what I'm trying to do there. And once again, like I said, I want to shade the pads differently. And light's a chaotic thing in art. It follows some very strange, and sometimes doesn't follow at all, rules. Like it's a very unpredictable force. I might put this art on Reddit. I might just do that with any art I draw. Actually, and I might link this, so that way hopefully my discussions aren't completely pointless. And this is a time where you do want the line art to be a little over because it makes this idea that's really shiny and reflective. Because in my opinion, line art is a game of learning what you want the line art to be, like the thickness, and then it's kind of practicing how to make things clean from there. I'm not a professional artist, so don't 100% take my value as like, oh, this is how to do art, because I don't think there is a way to do art. I think I'm one of those. It's kind of up to interpretation, and that's what modern era is. That's what postmodernism is kind of about. It's what the modern age of art is, and when people say modern art, they often kind of not really insult it, but they kind of don't understand what the term really means. The term modern art and postmodernism is just the phrase that for a long time in history there were established art style, like ways to do art. Like there was concrete rules what was and or is or isn't art. But nowadays as the world's become more interconnected, we've kind of overwritten those rules. And now it's just kind of a game of, like, what do you think looks nice and what represents emotion and people or things or whatever you're trying to go for. It's, no matter what, it's the expression of something. Like, art is at its core expression. Let's actually get some damn shadowing. It's like even abstract art kind of gets to something at its core. Let's see, so the shadows, drawing character shadows has always been something somewhat difficult for me. And it's okay to have like weak areas or stuff like that, like stuff you struggle with. So let's see, that will be, that's not detailed or like distinct enough, so it will just be kind of like that. And from this angle, that's okay. And then Freddy's dopey head and top hat there. That's, I'm intentionally making this super vague. So I'm going to fill over it basically. Okay, you shouldn't be able to see like the guidelines I'm using. Ideally, when I'm doing these shadows, you'll notice in Neon Dynamo, if you ever read it, I don't do full-on character shadows often. Now I'm starting to get much more like deep shadows because I'm getting a bit more like into like I said, kind of overwriting my lines and stuff like that. And now I want, I guess I could. Let me do this so it's all kind of equal. Now I'm going to just lessen the shadows somewhat. There we go. That feels a bit more natural with like the lighting we got. You kind of want to align the strength of the shadow with the strength of your light source. I'm already an hour and so many minutes in. So I wonder now if do I want to do a background? I kind of don't want to. I might just leave it here and I'll continue talking about art a little bit. And I'll just end the stream in an hour, like 30 minutes or so, something. But to talk about like art a little bit, I might do some texturing actually. I don't always do different layer texturing. Let's see. How does that look? That actually might add a bit. Yeah, that adds a bit. That adds a kind of a fur texture to them. You kind of want to treat it like you're doing shading when you're doing this. But like I said, modern, like people say, oh, it's modern art when it's something really abstract. But that's just that, like I said, the term of we don't classify rules to stuff like that anymore. Let's see, what's the cluster on that look like? Okay, it's a bit finer. I also need to clean up some of this extra shadowing that's going on. And yeah, just what I'm getting at is like it's not that per se. It's just the idea that we don't classify art has to follow a specific set of rules anymore. We now say like we've now kind of just like I said followed on that kind of meaning of it's more like a system of expression than anything. Let's add some more. Let's actually. Did I do this on the color layer? Where did I do this? Did I do this shading? Shading is where I did this. let's modify this so that it's now, I think a purpley kind of fits a bit better. It's more associated with FNAF. So yeah, modern art, the term just means we don't have like rules for what art can and can't be anymore. And it's a much more freeing and a lot more like general and inclusive thing. And like I said, it's kind of a symptom of like the world we live in now. Everyone has a lot more ability to connect and like interact with each other. Than ever before. We have the internet. We have so many ways to, like I said, contact and communicate that you can't classify art a specific way anymore because there are so many different new types of art. And so on. That's just kind of the general point I'm getting at. It's like art's complicated and stuff. I don't know where I'm going with this anymore. I'm gonna do these sparkles and then I'm done. Cause I honestly haven't. I start one of these streams and I have never any clue. What I'm going to do with it. Do I want to do? How do I want to do these stars? I don't really want them to be pentagrams. So I guess I'll just make them more traditional stars. They feel almost a little bit more natural when they've got the lines connecting them, but they also look better. Let's get that purple going. That's the layer. Just want to make sure. And to continue on a little bit about, I guess, also kind of art, but not really this exact same topic, is when it comes to modern gaming, I think Scott understands I think even Matt Petz vocalized this a few times on like live streams and stuff. Pretty sure he has. That Scott kind of understands the internet landscape a lot more than some companies do, or a fair amount of companies do, and that is having the modern age. You can't just hide like old school stuff of just having like obscure steps to the days of like playground rumors and stuff are really hard to do nowadays because there's the internet and so much of your stuff can be instantly unlocked just by like a walkthrough. But the way FNAF is designed with the RNG hidden events, you can't really get all of them guaranteed in like the same playthrough. I'm kind of doing this to give Freddy a bit more of like a ooh, and all that, like whoosh, and it also covers up some of the shading stuff that side of him. Let's do that. Let's do droplets around this. Actually, let me get rid of all this like speckle stuff I'm doing around. I'm just put it around the stars. Like Scott understands that having those rare obscure events that happen every now and then that can be super unique and defining to someone's first experience with the game kind of reignites that feeling that's really hard to capture with games that are predictable and follow the same set patterns. And he understands that no matter how obscure or small a detail is, people analyze it and look at it and try to understand and decipher it. I don't use the highlight tool a lot. I kind of forget what it ends up looking like. It's hard to tell when it's that dense, but I just realized why. I just remembered why I don't really use it much. Let's add just a bit of a more of glow to like that. That's definitely Freddy. It's recognizably him. I'll do one last adjustment here, and that's not the biggest fan of Freddy's bow tie. I think I didn't really get something I wanted to down here, and that's there we go. That's just a slight little correction to get. And I also want to like clean up the. This is right. Do the lighting on some layers so I can clean up stuff like that a bit. And yeah, that's recognizably Freddy. It's a weird mixture of that's what my default art style is actually. It's just a weird mixture of realism and cartoonism. Anyway, that's the stream. This is Freddy Fazbear. Thank you